We'll go ahead and get started. Welcome. We're here tonight for a partial smoke loss webinar. Thank you for joining us. I'm going to do a few housekeeping things and then we'll go ahead and launch into our presentation. Some of you did send questions in advance and we've tried to work those questions into our presentation tonight. So we will try to hit all of those for you, although some of them are pretty long, but I think everybody's questions are pretty much in the same genre. So we'll address those for you. We're not going to have a ton of Q&A tonight. We will, if there are questions that sort of pertain to the group as a whole, we'll try to answer them for you. But otherwise, we're going to go ahead and do a second Q&A. For those of you who joined us last Wednesday, we had a bunch of people on and we had a lot of questions and answers. So if we're not able to get to your question tonight, hold on and we'll try to get it to you by next week. But our goal is to try to answer your questions with the presentation. Okay, so it looks like people have stopped popping in, so I'm going to go ahead and get going. Okay, so this is navigating partial smoke loss damage wildfire claims. I'm Sandra Watts. For those of you who don't know me, I'm a project coordinator and an instructor on United Policyholders Roadmap to Recovery program. My background is in insurance claims and claims management. So I worked for a long time at a very big insurance company. I'm also a IICRC certified fire and smoke remediation technician and a water restoration technician. So I've got some experience with the smoke and how to deal with the smoke claims that will hopefully be of benefit to all of you. For those of you who are joining us for the first time, United Policyholders is a 501c3 nonprofit organization, and our mission is to be a voice and information resource for insurance consumers in all 50 states. We are founded, Amy Bach, our executive director, is a co-founder of United Policyholders. We've been around for almost 30 years. When we started after the Oakland Hills fire, when we recognized a need for insurance consumer advocacy and education. And so we've been around. We've been around for a long time. We'll be around for a lot longer. And we're here to help you. All of our program work is funded by grants and donations. We're not for profit, not for sale. We don't accept money from insurance companies. It allows us to be non-biased. We do have a big volunteer corps of people who have been through situations like your own. One of them is with us tonight. We're lucky to have her. As well as other professionals, attorneys, public adjusters, CPAs, and different professionals that help guide us and help you. Okay, so fine print, we have to do the small bits. This workshop is intended to be general guidance. It's not legal advice. I'm not a lawyer, I'm a claims adjuster. You will be hearing from our staff attorney, but even when he's talking, it's not legal advice. We sometimes recommend people look at our sponsors. We do have sponsors listed at uphelp.org. We know all these people, but we don't warrant or endorse them. Okay, with that, we're going to get right into our program, and I'd like to introduce Carrie Waite. She is our Colorado coordinator, and she herself came to United Policyholders through a loss of her own. So go ahead, Carrie.
Hi, and welcome everyone to the club that no one really volunteers to be in. My fire was 8 years ago, a little over 8 years ago, and it blew in at about 65 miles per hour without a lot of notice into my neighborhood and took out about 350 to 400 homes, depending on how you define that. In about a 1.5 mile radius, and it changed my life. And I did not lose my home. I was a partial loss standing home. And we can move to the next slide, please. Thank you. I remember when we were allowed to finally come back in to the neighborhood after about a week of not being allowed in because the fires were still burning, and finding out that our homes were standing. Those of us that had standing homes thought we were the lucky ones initially. Then, of course, we learned that sometimes not so much. Of course, the total losses get the immediate triage attention because of all the need that is there. But it can be really hard, as I'm sure you all already know, to get the attention of the insurance adjusters and the restoration companies and the other helpers when you have neighbors who have lost everything. Yet we are expected to move back into these homes potentially. And I just wanted to share with you, when asked, some of the pearls. I've had the pleasure of working with United Policyholders, both as a volunteer and as Colorado coordinator in the years since, and have seen many people navigate successfully through this difficult path that you guys are on. And I really want to be here to give you hope and empower you with information that we have to share, and affirmation that you will get through this journey, and we have resources to help you, and to encourage you that you are the one that has to drive the vehicle to get whole again, and that is, the vehicle is the resources that are available to you, and you want to stay in the driver's seat for that. Pardon all my puns here, but they're appropriate. Okay, let's go to the next slide. Thank you. So some of the pearls and I'd like to share, I'm going to go over very briefly, and just know, of course, we're going to touch on a lot more of this later on. But try, if you can help it, not to move back in to your damaged home until you feel your home is safe to inhabit. You may already be back in your home. I was, in fact, back in my home initially, trying to get additional living expense approved so that I could move out for remediation. But we really need to be aware of some things, like it can be harder to get an insurer to agree to additional living expense if you're already back living in the home. There are lots of potential harmful unseen residues that come from everything that burned around you and before you, that can be laid down on surfaces and not even necessarily very visible. I remember walking into my house and I was so relieved because it looked kind of okay. And I was in such shock from the neighborhood and the total losses. And then I took my shoes off the first time on my wooden kitchen floor, and I knew there was a lot more there than I realized. So if you can get an additional living expense approved and get established in a safe, reasonably comfortable living, alternate living space while you remediate your home, that's ideal. And please take into account special health considerations. Your doctors can help you with notes and things to help you get approval to live elsewhere. Also, the insurance company may be more engaged and anxious to give attention to you to get things resolved in order to get you back home and stop spending money on alternative living. So that's just sort of my first glance tip. And then most importantly, and you will hear this from UP over and over again, you speak up for yourself. Don't rely just on your insurer, adjusters, or the government to protect and advocate for you, because only you really know your home. You know your body, you know what used to be. So you're the best person to speak up for getting yourself back to where you were pre-loss. And you have an indemnity policy, and that's what it's there for. So next slide, please. Okay, here are my quick tips. The devil and dollars are in the details. Obsessively chronicle and document everything. A great way to document your communications is to email your insurer and restoration contractors, even to email them back after you meet with them what you understood they told you. Because if it's not in writing, there's no way to demonstrate it was ever said. So email, 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 write notes, message, whatever way of communication you can establish with them that you can document. Take videos and pictures of everything. Keep your damaged property if you can, or at least a sample of it until the claim is settled. Keep a timeline notepad with a pocket for all of your receipts. And even if you think you might not need it, keep it. It's the easiest thing to do. Just get in the habit. Use your intuition and critical eye in assessing damages. A lot of times things are fairly subtle initially. You might want to just sort of look at things like your gutters from a different angle to see if they're sagging or warped from the heat. And you can help guide that because you know how your home was before. And then thoroughly vet all contractors and read contracts, because just because it's an emergency and you desperately need help, it's even more of a reason to do the due diligence to vet the people that you're going to trust to work with you. So those are the key points that I want to share. There is one more slide and I'll just touch on it very quickly. If you can advance to the next one. Thank you. And this is just about building yourself up so that you can advocate for yourself. You are your best advocate. You don't need to take no for an answer when your gut tells you it's not fair and it's not the right answer. Elevate your request up the chain of management. If your adjuster's not jiving with you or you don't think they're hearing you, go up the chain to management. Ask help from other people, such as friends and regulators. You have great regulators in California. And it's great to group together people that have the same insurer and the same challenges. You can group together and your voice becomes more powerful, and UP can help you do that. They can help you group and give you so many resources. Go to our website and fish around. We have lots to help guide you. Take care of yourself and your family. I know that one of the things I learned right away was if you can find a way wherever you're living, whatever your circumstances are, to establish simple little routines and rituals that maybe you had previously in your home. Maybe there's a chair in the corner by a window where you would have your coffee. Maybe you make French press. Set that up so you do that every day so that you can be grounded and have your rituals that help you feel some sense of normalcy. And look for the silver linings because they're there. I have made the best friends of my life through this circumstance and work, and it's brought many silver linings, and you will get there. You will get restored, and the worst circumstances make for the best stories. I wish you all the best, and that's it. Next, you're going to hear from Mark Dillman, and Mark is a staff attorney at United Policyholders with more than 10 years in the industry. In the insurance industry. He's been a licensed public adjuster and is an attorney, and it has some very good, solid information to share with you. So I'll turn it over to Mark.
Thank you very much, Carrie. I appreciate you being on and sharing kind of what you've gone through. It's a definitely important perspective. So I want to say thank you again. And I want to say thank you to everybody that's on today. So before we get back into the meat of the presentation, I'd just like to give a very quick overview of a few claim handling rules and regulations. And it looks like, there we go. Thank you. I'm going to keep the person handling the PowerPoint very busy because I'm going to try and move quickly through these. But basically, knowing your rights and being informed is one of the most important aspects of having a successful claim managed. And two sources that dictate how insurance companies should act are the California Insurance Code and the California Code of Regulations. And basically what I'm trying to do here today is just arm you with how to find these rules and regulations that I'm going to be talking about and let you know that they exist. So next slide, please. Thank you. So I'm not going to be going into intense detail here. I'm going to be moving quite quickly, as I mentioned, but I do want to let you know that you can find more information on these rules that I'm going to be speaking about on UP's website, on our website, uphelp.org. There's a specific landing page for resources for this or for 2020 wildfires, but you can also find information on insurance.ca.gov, and they host the insurance code and the insurance regulations that I'll be speaking of directly on their page as well. Next slide, please. So I wanted to start with the duty of good faith. And your insurance company has a duty to act in good faith to effectuate a prompt, fair, and equitable settlement of your claim. And I want you to think of this as kind of the umbrella of what I'm going to be speaking about next. You know, everything that, all of the rules that are put out there go back to this. Does your insurer or is your insurer handling your claim in good faith? Are they upholding the obligations of the contract that you signed? And that's really what that second paragraph is there for as well. Just a reminder that this insurance policy is a contract and it's interpreted as such by the courts. And so again, duty of good faith is the overarching theme as I go through these rules that I'm discussing next. Next slide, please. Thank you. So the unfair claim settlement practices are outlined in the California Insurance Code. There are 16 that are explicitly written, and the second bullet there, 10 CCR. You'll see these citations. You don't have to go crazy writing them down, but I did include them in the PowerPoint so that you could go back either after this presentation later on. Hopefully you won't need them, and reference the PowerPoint that will be posted to easily access them. So you don't have to scramble to write them down, but the insurance commissioner then went and made rules based on those regulations and kind of set the minimum standards for claim settlement practices to promote good faith and prompt settlement. Again, that overarching theme. So what we're going to do now is we're going to start running through a couple of these. So claim handling and timeframes. So know that your insurance company must disclose all benefits, coverage, time limits, and other provisions in any insurance policy that may be applicable to the claim presented. So the key takeaway here is that the insurance company, if you provide them with information about your claim, they can't hide the ball. You do have to drive your own claim, but they do also have an obligation to let you know what coverages are implicated. So communicate in writing, let them know what's going on, and they do have that duty to tell you what you're owed. Discrimination, I included that in this section, not for the typical discrimination components that we normally see in our everyday life, age, race, gender, but that last line there of that bottom paragraph says discrimination, that is not allowed upon the territory of the property or the person insured. Now, this doesn't mean that they have to treat you exactly like they treated your neighbor. If you have similar claims, there might be key similarities, there might be key differences. But I put that in there to remind you that communication, not only with your insurance company, but also to your neighbors to say, hey, we received this treatment, we received this benefit from our policy. Here's how they're handling this, might be able to be used as leverage moving forward. Again, hopefully you don't run into issues, but if you do, that's one avenue. All right, next slide, please. So again, I'm going to move through a couple of these aspects sort of quickly, but there are rules for processing your claim. It's a 15 days. We have a couple of 15-day rules here in a row. They must acknowledge that they have received your claim within 15 days, and they must provide you with forms you're required to complete and explain how you're supposed to complete them. Investigating, they must begin any necessary investigation within 15 days. And the important part of that last paragraph there is that they shall not persist in seeking information not reasonably required for resolution. So they shouldn't be asking you for duplicative information 2, 3, 4 times. If you provided them with a list of contents items that you lost and you have priced them, you've provided pictures, they might not need to have those receipts. So keep that in mind that you do have rights, and they cannot keep asking for information that they already have or do not need. Next slide, please. So communicating information to you, another 15-day. Your insurance company must respond to your questions and reply to your communications within 15 days. And I want to point out that this is enforced to communications that reasonably suggest a response is warranted. Now, I don't want folks to get hung up and be waiting for that 16th day, but if there hasn't been communication or response to a question, reminding them that this code section exists can be helpful to getting your question answered and your claim moving forward. There's also a 15-day timeline on request that they must produce a copy of your claim-related documents. And there's a long list here, but things like estimates, bids, cost of repairs, and that's in the California Insurance Code and not in the regulations that I've been referencing. But I think that's important to know, along with 30 days for a copy of your policy. If you request it, they must provide it to you within 30 days. We say ask for a certified copy of your policy if you don't already have one. They may not provide you a certified, but ask for a complete copy. And that's one of the biggest factors to moving your claim forward, is knowing what's actually in your policy. Now, next slide, please. So again, I mentioned requesting claim-related documents in your policy. I want to point out that we do have a host of resources. uphelp.org/samples does give you the resources or sample letters, excuse me, does provide sample letters because putting things in writing and documenting your claim is going to be one of the most important things moving forward to make sure that your claim is handled properly. So check out that page if you would like to see multiple claim-related documents and sample letters. Next page, please. So communicating information to you continued. So multiple adjusters. This section is important and I'd like to highlight it now. So 6 months. If within a 6-month period, your insurance company assigns a third or subsequent adjuster to handle your claim, they must provide you with a written status report. We do often see the carousel of adjusters, and knowing about this and enforcing this rule is important to your claim. It has to include, as you see there, a summary of losses and payments made, the amount of coverage, and whether they have hired any professionals. If this claim has arisen from a state of emergency and you are assigned a third or subsequent adjuster, they not only owe you a written status report, but most important is a primary point of contact. Also, they must provide you with one or more direct means of communication with that primary contact. And even further than that, this primary contact shall refer and transfer an insured to the appropriate supervisor upon request. So keep this in mind if there is a carousel of adjusters that have been assigned to your claim, especially with most of these partial losses, and I assume folks on here from a state of emergency, know that if you do get that third or subsequent adjuster, that you are entitled to that primary point of contact and can call to be connected to their supervisor. Next slide, please. So paying or denying your claim. So the insurance company must accept or reject your claim in whole or in part within 40 days upon receiving proof of your claim. If they reject it, they must tell you why. If they cannot accept or deny your claim within that first 40 days, they need to tell you in writing that they need extra time. And thereafter, they are required to give you written notice every 30 days. Also, another 30 days, the insurance company accepts your claim. They must pay you the undisputed portion of the claim immediately, but not any more than 30 days, excuse me. Next slide, please. So choosing who will repair the property. Again, I want to slow down here for just a moment and remind everybody that your insurance company cannot require you to have your property repaired by a specific individual or entity. That is a choice that you are able to make. And it's especially important for partial losses where there are kind of a lot of moving pieces. There may be pieces of your claim that are accepted, some that are denied. There may be a little bit more pushback. Remember that you have the power to choose who does the repairs. And I believe Sandra will talk about that a little bit more, but your insurer also cannot suggest or recommend that you have your property repaired by a specific individual or entity. unless you request it or you've been informed of the in writing of the right to select a repair individual. And if you accept it, they have to they have to do a good job with the restoration. All right, next slide, please. All right, another important regulation section, and I apologize, we have quite a bit of text on this slide, but I thought that it was important to have the actual text of this section on the slide so that we can break it down. And if you need to go back to this slide later on, again, the PowerPoint will be posted. But basically, what the important parts of this regulation points out that if there are disputes with pricing and competing estimates, if those losses are settled on the basis of a written scope and our estimate prepared, the insurer shall supply you with a copy of each document upon which the settlement is based. And I want to go down to the third paragraph here now and show that representative, those costs when they write these estimates must be based on the local market area. And that's especially important after these disasters hit, where there are labor shortages and the price of materials skyrockets. So first two important points. The third, and here's something we really want to emphasize, if you contend based on a written estimate that you obtain conflicts with the insurers, that necessary repairs will exceed the written estimate prepared by that insurer, the insurer has three options, and it outlines three. And we don't see any more. There's not, it's capped here. They can either, one, pay the difference between your estimate and their estimate. They can, two, provide the claimant yourself with the name of at least one repair individual or entity that will make the repairs for the amount of their written estimate. But I want to highlight those first two words, if requested. And that's important to keep in mind. So they can only take their estimate, which is, in this situation, lower than your estimate, lower than the necessary repairs, and say, hey, we've provided this estimate, and they can only give you a name of a contractor who can put that put the home back together if you request it. So one of the three options, you actually have to trigger that to happen. And the third, and probably the most likely, is reasonably adjust any written estimate that is prepared and that you have supplied them. So again, capped at those three options. All right, next slide, please. So fair depreciation, I just wanted to highlight that depreciation is allowed in many policies. And the important takeaway here is insurers must consider both the age and the condition of the property. We'll be presenting, we'll have more workshops, we'll have more information on depreciation, but just know that off the bat that they must consider both age and condition. All right, next slide, please. Complaints, attorneys, and litigation. Back to some of the quick regulation sections. Your insurance company cannot retaliate for making a complaint. They can't threaten or intimidate you to keep you from making a complaint. They can't attempt to settle a claim by making an offer that is unreasonably low, or lowballing, as you'll often hear it called by us. Unreasonably deny a claim, which in turn forces you to sue to recover those benefits, or directly advise you against obtaining these services of an attorney. Flag any one of these practices if they do happen to you. All right, next slide, please. I would also like to highlight there are rules set out for non-renewals and cancellations. If you're within a zip code that is impacted by the state of emergency, you're not allowed to be non-renewed or canceled within 1 year. What the commission often does, and as you see on the screen here, is that there's notices that are put out in the interim before these moratoriums that list all of the zip codes impacted that ask the insurers to hold off. So again, just putting it out there so that you're aware of it. I'm not going to go into much more detail than that right now, but just be aware that if you do get a notice of cancellation or non-renewal, that a flag should go up. So what do I do with this information? To wrap up, use these resources as a tool to get your claim paid promptly and fairly. If you do experience any of these issues, politely and professionally remind your adjuster of these regulations and code sections, and use it to move your claim forward, not necessarily to create a dispute. I wanted to highlight that violations of the regs allow the commissioner to assess penalties on insurers, and this is not meant to be a litigation springboard. So if you're waiting there and you know that the insurer hasn't responded within 17 days, use that as a reminder to get a response. The best case scenario and the best outcome for everybody here is to move your claim forward, to get it promptly and fairly paid. And using these regulations and just having the knowledge that they exist what can help you move it forward before it becomes a bigger issue is the goal. So thank you for your time. I apologize for spinning through. I just wanted to make sure everyone was aware of these, and I'll hand it off now.
Okay, I'm back here. So we're going to go through and we're going to talk about some of the issues that we're seeing people experience with these partial loss claims. You did hear from Carrie and Mark. And, unfortunately, one of the things that happens in situations like these is that the people, who have suffered total losses generally get a lot more attention, unfortunately. So, and a lot of times they assign a more experienced adjuster to the total losses, when in fact, I think that these partial losses are much more difficult to claims to adjust. So, okay, so ALE is one of the things that I keep getting questions about. So I'm going to go through this again. I apologize if you were at my Q&A last week, but I do want to touch on this, because one of the things that I'm seeing happen is that adjusters are coming out to the house and they're saying, oh, you have a little soot, but your house is habitable and we're cutting off your additional living expenses, on the spot or 2 days from now. So I think that that's unacceptable, and we'll try to walk you through how to get some relief on that. This is just the standard additional living expense language. There are some policies that have different language, but this is how most policies are set up, and we break it down. Okay, so when a loss insured, this happens to be a State Farm ALE, loss insured. Okay, fire is insured, causes the resident's premises, your house, to become uninhabitable, which means unfit to live in. Once you've met that, they owe you additional living expenses under most policies until your home is again safe to be habitable. If you missed it, we do have on the 2020 California wildfire website some links to our prior webinars, and one is how to read and understand your policy, and it can go into a little bit more of this. Just know that some of the policies say that your property has to be damaged, and some don't say that. Okay, what makes a home uninhabitable? Carrie touched on this a little bit. There are different measures for different people. People just simply have different tolerance. Some people are not sensitive to smoke or ash or smells. They come in, they clean up, and they go about their lives. Some people are very sensitive. You could have some pre-existing medical conditions that make you more vulnerable or sensitive to smoke. And so your threshold for acceptable levels changes person to person. And it's very important to know that an insurance company has to take you as you are. They have to take people as they are, and they cannot just impose one standard on all people. So if you need to, I think it's very invasive, but if you need to, get a letter from your doctor saying that you can't be exposed to it. And ask your adjuster what they think the threshold for habitability is, and how is that determined. I think you'll find that the guidelines for habitability are pretty, wavy. And different, there's different thresholds. So point out to them that smoke particles are known to contain toxins. They're known to contain carcinogens. And, if there's smoke in your house, you can certainly request not to occupy it until it's been remediated. I tossed this in here, Civil Code Section 1941. It's habitability. I didn't put the whole thing in here, but it's habitability for tenants. So like landlords who rent property have to have minimum standards. You have to have a building envelope. You have to have, heat and power and water and all that. That is one of the things you can use to talk about habitability, okay? I wanted to show this loss of power off premises. Some of you are being told that if the power is off premises, then there's no ALE coverage. My position, my opinion is that if you have a policy that's written like this with the more common language, if you read this, it doesn't say that the damage has to be to your residence premises. It says when the loss insured causes the residence premises to become uninhabitable. Sorry, I'm trying to go fast because we're up against timeline here. But so loss insured is fire. Residence premises doesn't have any power. There you go. I think it triggers it. Let me show you a different policy. This is a farmer's policy. This one actually says that you have to have accidental, direct, distinct, and demonstrable physical loss or damage to the actual dwelling. Okay, so this is making it clear that if the only thing wrong with your house is no power or water because of the utility, ALE is probably not going to apply in that case. Okay, so you've got to read your policies. Okay. What qualifies for additional living expenses? We do have a whole webinar on additional living expenses and how to make those last. If you want them, if you want a link to that webinar, you can request it at info@uphelp.org. But these are just some things. So in most cases, expenses need to be incurred, which means, basically spent. And it's your increased costs. So unfortunately, even if you're not able to live in your home, you still have to pay your mortgage. So things like rent for your temporary hotel or housing, increased food costs when you don't have a kitchen. If you paid family or friends for temporary shelter, you could be reimbursed on that. Extra mileage because you're commuting, different things, moving costs, pet boarding costs, and so forth. Every insurer is required to provide you a list if you request it, so ask them for the list. Okay. And what we want to do, you're there until your home is restored as close as possible to the pre-wildfire condition. Okay. So we've had a lot of conversations. Some of you are new here, but we have been having ongoing conversations about getting your house inspected or tested and remediated and cleaned and repaired, and all of these things. So that is our goal. Okay. And we're going to talk more about that. Okay. So one of the issues that comes up is doing a thorough inspection. Okay. And who is qualified to inspect your home and tell you what kind of damage you have? I've been pretty vocal about saying that in most cases, an adjuster, I think that they're qualified if they're willing to make the call that, yes, I see, smoke, soot, ash, char, all of that. We're going to pay for a professional remediation, then that's fine. What I think they're not qualified to do is walk into a house and say that there's no problem, that there's no risk, that there's no damage, and that it is habitable. So what I would recommend is if you've got an adjuster and your adjusters, got their tissue or Q-tip or whatever it is that they're using to try to tell you that your home is habitable, I would ask them about their qualifications. What kind of training did they go through? Are they certified in any sort of smoke or fire remediation, and how did they get there? In addition, I would hold their feet to the fire on appropriate remediation techniques. Okay. The adjusters who were saying that your house can just be cleaned, or they're wrong. I mean, in most cases, if you've got enough smoke, it has to be done properly in order to remove. If you vacuum smoke particles are really small. If you vacuum smoke with a regular vacuum cleaner, it just vents it right out the other end. So it's really not helpful. So we want to talk about appropriate remediation techniques, air quality and soft good testing, and cleaning versus replacing items. Okay. So these are the problems that we seem to, you guys have been experiencing. I'm really sorry. You're finding that a lot of these adjusters are overworked and undertrained, that the total losses are getting higher priority, you know, that they don't find what you don't want to find. That's not you, that's them. And then cost consideration driving the decisions, that the cost of hiring the experts and paying for remediation is expensive. So the insurers naturally push back on that. However, if you have that kind of damage, that's something that you are entitled to get yourself back to where you were. Okay. The other thing that a lot of times the adjusters don't address when they're out there is hidden damage. You know, smoke, like I said before, smoke and ash. It's funny, there's different definitions. Pure smoke particles are very, very small. And when it's a smoke particle that's the result of complete combustion, they measure like a half a micron to about 4 or 5 microns, and you can only see down to about 50 microns. So it's smaller than the naked eye. Ash and, well, soot you don't really get, but ash and char are products of incomplete combustion. And they're little bits of carbon that from different things that have burned, and they, you know, make up what you see. Those are the visible particles. So if you have the visible particles, know that there's something there that you probably can't see as well. Okay. And so there's a lot of things that are hidden. Okay. They can get into, one of the good places to test is taking off light switch covers, outlets, because those are holes in the building envelope. The drywall has to be cut for your electrical outlet and things like that. These all, and I'll talk about air quality a little bit later. Attics and crawls or ducts. I'm sorry, I missed ducts there. If your system, like if your air conditioning was running at the time of the fire when you had to evacuate, sometimes that pulls particles into the system itself. Particles can also go into the ducting in through the cold air return and the heater vents. So those are good places to take those vents off and have tape lift tests there. Attics and crawl spaces. Attics are a very common place to see a lot of smoke. Most houses have vents that allow, as the hot air rises in your house, it allows the hot air to leave, you know, through these attic vents. Well, that's exactly where the smoke comes in when there is smoke. And then inside your attics, most of them have insulation, and insulation acts as a sponge. Insulation can never be cleaned. So if you have insulation and you have any smoke or soot in your attic or crawl spaces, then that needs to come out, the area cleaned, and new insulation put in. Same thing with underlayment and sheathing, depending on what's over the top of them. Most commonly is underneath carpeting. Carpeting pad is like, you guys have seen it, it's like rubbery and it's a bunch of rubber kind of smushed together. It acts like a sponge, and it will really hold those odors. You can't really clean it. When you clean the floor, you don't really clean the pad. So in a lot of cases where you have tried to maybe clean the carpet and you still have some pervasive odor, a lot of cases that means that the carpet and the pad need to come out. Okay, we're not going to talk I haven't heard much about water and mold. Maybe a little bit from the refrigerators. We'll get to the refrigerators later. And then I did want to talk about air quality. I know some of you guys have had adjusters tell you that they don't insure air, that they don't pay for odors. That is where that slide where there's fire, there's smoke. The first rule of odor control is to remove the source. Odor doesn't come from nowhere. It's not, even if you can't see it, there's something that causes the odor. And in smoke losses, it's smoke particles sometimes that you can't see. So when they tell you they don't insure the air, you can talk about the fact that it's the particles that are making the air smell. Okay. So this is just a slide on insurers' stances. We were seeing things all around, different things. One of the things you want to, this cultivating friendly experts. I was looking at someone today who had what I felt was a decent smoke report done, and their insurer wanted to hire their own. Well, that's a friendly expert. What I would recommend, so if you get your own smoke report and your insurer is saying that they want their own, you have to cooperate, so that's fine. They can get their own. However, I would have them tell you before, why do they need it? What is wrong with your person's report? And why can't it be used? And I think that they need something substantial to tell you and to say, look, well, this is why. And I've got a copy of a little bit of a report that I can show you that that will sort of give you an example. But they shouldn't, just because they want to use somebody who they know isn't necessarily good enough. Okay, hope I'm making that clear. But what you want is a thorough inspection. You want a complete report. You want a complete estimate. And so it's important to know what's included in a thorough inspection and what kind of report should you receive. What are some of the commonly missed or overlooked or inappropriately minimized damages? Okay. And I'll show you that when I get a little bit further. And I do apologize because we do have some newer people with the glass fire here. So we're kind of pretty high level tonight. We're going to get in another webinar, really into the hygienist reports and the restoration reports at a later date. Okay. Okay, making the case that your insurer should pay. Make the request formally in writing. Now, there's been some confusion on when an industrial hygienist report is needed, okay? And when is it needed? If your adjuster comes in, confirms you have smoke and ash, and says, yes, we will pay for professional remediation, then you might not need a hygienist report. In most cases, the most important time you need it is when your insurer is saying, you don't have damage, and we're not going to pay. So in a case like that, it's my position that they can't just say that. They need to have a basis for their position, and they need to outline their investigation. And I don't believe that having a adjuster with various levels of experience walking in and saying, well, I don't think this is a problem. I don't think that is an adequate investigation. So you need to make your requests in writing. If that happens to you, and request additional inspections and say, look, I need something to document that to back up what they're saying, that if you don't have damage, okay? So let's talk about the different experts that are out there. There's industrial hygienists. You guys, unfortunately, are becoming quite know what these people are now. Sorry, I'm going too fast. Acquainted is the word I was looking for, with these, probably more than you ever wanted to know. But industrial hygienists are good. Certified restoration companies, always ask somebody from the restoration company who's working on your house must be certified. The big certification company is IICRC, which is the Institute of Inspection, Cleaning, and Restoration. So make sure that they're certified. Okay, I've heard some stories about people coming in with mops and buckets and cleaning only up far as up the wall as they can reach. That is not a protocol for smoke loss. Okay. Know that there are experts that clean electronic, artwork, appliances, HVAC. I'll show you an HVAC concern that I have on a report later. There's people who can inspect carpets, furnishings, all those type of things. And also roofs and windows. Depending on how close the fire got to your house, if it burned right up to your house, we recommend having your roof inspected by a certified roofer. Your windows, especially if they're vinyl clad windows, the smoke, the heat can weaken them, and you'll see them deteriorate over time. Same with siding, gutters, and all that. So a lot of times you need to get a specialty contractor. So how can an expert or contractor help? They can get your claim moving forward and keep it moving forward, okay? It gives you credible documentation of your damages in a situation where the insurance company must do something, with it. As Mark said before, you can't just, if you send something into your insurance company, they can't just dismiss it automatically out of hand. They can't just say, well, we're not going to consider your contractor's estimate. We don't think the work needs to be done. It needs to be more than that. They need to, do a comparison. They need to back it up with some sort of third-party documentation, okay? And that's what you're doing. You're documenting your dollars, your costs. You make your case, and at a certain point, it makes it easier to say yes and harder to say no. It helps you meet your responsibilities of cooperation under the policy, and also it gives you some peace of mind that a professional is looking at your home. I've been hearing from a lot of people who are doing a lot of refrigerator cleaning on their own. That's fine if you want to do that. But to me, it's kind of horrifying because that's, you're entitled to a professional people cleaning things up. So, okay. Here's some more ways that an expert or contractor can help. If your insurer is slow to respond, the adjuster's estimate seems incomplete. Okay, this is a really important one. When Mark was talking about the remedies for when you have an estimate and they have an estimate and you send it in, they have to do something with it. They can't just dismiss it. And knowing those steps in the regulations will help you. And when they say, no, we did our estimate, you say, no, there's three choices here. Pay the difference, send me a contractor, which I don't want. We don't recommend that. Or number 3, do a reasonable adjustment of the estimate. And I think that that's hard. So it's very hard for me to accept an adjuster who has no training doing any adjustment of a licensed, certified professional remediation contractor who knows what they're doing. So when they take things out of the estimate, the remediation company should have something to say about that. Okay. Okay, so these are all good things, instincts, they get a second opinion. This is just a slide on locations. I think that in your house, areas that you can see have more or less smoke and ash. Perhaps if you had to leave quickly and left a window open, that's a good way for smoke to come in, and then you can kind of follow the path. How to find a certified industrial hygienist. I've got some lists. There's some lists out there. You can go to the Indoor Air Quality Association, and they have a list of licensed certified hygienists. You guys are circulating them among yourselves, which is great because people can find out if they like them. When you hire one, the testing they'll do, and I'll get into that, and how much will it cost? You guys are going to find that the costs range greatly. What I've seen so far in this, I've seen from between $600 and about $2,800. It's just, you've got to kind of ask around. There's also some different methods of testing. I think, generally leave that to the professionals. Make sure you feel confident in their abilities. Okay. So test results, what findings matter? How should the findings be reported? What does an air quality report look like? So here's an example. Here's an example of a case in the river fire. And these are, if you look at these, and I had to just sort of take it out, these are tape lift samples. TL means tape lift. So there's a couple different ways that they can identify areas. Tape lift is really the most common. And they should be going to areas that you can see. And they do tape lifts. They talk about where they do them. These right down here, these MV, that's a micro vacuum. So what they do is they have this little vacuum and they've got a little filter. And so when they suck it in, it sucks it against like a slide, sort of like a microscope slide. And they can try to get, you'll notice that's a chair, a bed, and couches. So that's how you get it out of soft furniture, because if you did a tape lift, say on my couch, you're going to get all those fibers. So it's not really appropriate. So they do it a different way. There is another way of using cartridges. It's much harder. You have to seal the room off, create negative pressure, and then you run a machine that pulls the air through these cartridges and deposits the smoke on there. That's more done with mold than it is with smoke. And it's a little more expensive. It's a little tougher to do. So I think that the tape lift and the micro vacuums are definitely fine. Okay, know that there's a lot of sort of back and forth. There's a dispute going on between some of the certification companies over who owns the standards. And right now, as I'm talking, there are no published standards for threshold levels of soot, smoke, and ash. Okay. Most of the companies are setting them themselves. They're hopefully going to publish it this year. They said that it was originally going to be done by the end of the year, and COVID slowed it down. But most of the companies I'm looking at, 5% or greater of combined char, ash, and soot is the threshold for triggering the need for professional remediation. And if you look here, we've got a window track. This is outside, exterior. You've got a window track with 10%. You've got some things here. So you've got living room doors, upstairs bathroom. So this is a case where this bathroom window was left open when the homeowners left the house. So they've got some stuff here. The bathtub has got a lot of, soot and ash. Okay. And remember this, because when I go to the next slide, I'm going to show you something on the master bedroom. So there's definitely some ash and smoke in this house. The attic has a little bit, and the HVAC, it's interesting. They did a tape lift of the cold air return, and they said they found nothing, which is interesting. Let's go to the next slide here. This is the recommendations, okay? And when I read this, I'm like, nope, this is an inadequate hygienist report, okay? Because let's talk about this. They're talking about HEPA vacuuming windowsills and tracks, that's fine, door tracks, bathtubs, interesting, and surrounding areas, following by wet washing with detergents such as Dawn Ultra. Okay, first off, recommend something like Dawn Ultra is sort of like subliminally giving you the impression that you can do this yourself. Okay, that's my opinion. I'm going to stick with that opinion. If you ask your restoration company, your professional restoration company, if they're going to clean your house with Dawn Ultra, they're going to laugh at you, because they use professional cleaning products that are specifically have the right pH. And so one of the things that happens is that, smoke has, it's acidic. And so they have to change the pH. It's one of the reasons why you can't really do this yourself. First off is HEPA vacuuming. Some people do have HEPA vacuums. They're not quite as airtight as the ones that the professionals use, but HEPA needs to happen. That's high efficiency particulate air filters, what HEPA stands for. And it goes down to like half a micron or less. I think some of them are 0.1 microns. And so that means that when it's sucking things in and then venting the air out, those little tiny particles can't get out, they get trapped. So it's interesting because in this room, which is the bathroom was the worst, smoke rises, so they didn't really address, they say surrounding areas, but they didn't really address wall, ceiling. They don't even talk about the floors. Okay. And the restoration company is certainly not going to use Dawn Ultra. So that is one of the things that sort of tipped me off. And their recommendations really aren't enough to clean. I mean, you've got the entire room is bad. The attic, no recommendations. So if you have a hygienist that does something like this, if they said no recommendations for the attic, I want to know why. I want to know, why you think that that this needs, this doesn't need anything. They need to talk about that. Same thing with the HVAC system. Just saying no recommendations is inadequate. And I would go back to these people and say, well, let's have a discussion. And, they're going to point to the wood truss and so forth. But I would talk about the insulation. And this actually happens to be a case where the adjuster allowed the insulation already. So anyway, those are just a few things. Okay. Questions to ask: are you certified? Are you going to give a detailed estimate and schedule? Let me talk about that a little bit. You are entitled, you are the homeowner. They should be sending the estimate to you. It's fine to send it to the insurer, but make it clear that you want the estimate simultaneously. It's your schedule. Make sure they have supervision, meetings, make sure they've got all their, do your due diligence with licensing and bonding and so forth. Okay. Who pays for experts? Sometimes a contractor will do things for free. Hygienist, fees may or may not get reimbursed. Most of the time I see, if you push it, eventually they'll pay for the hygienist. Some of you might, if you have a vulnerable individual who lives in the house and you want a post-remediation hygienist, I think you can make a good case for making sure that the house is safe for your vulnerable person to reoccupy. Okay. Restoration contractors, that should be paid under your claim. And then sometimes people hire public adjusters and attorneys who you have to pay on either a contingency or hourly basis. Okay. Who manages the restoration? You, or if you have a general contractor. Be wary of preferred contractors. Mark talked about earlier about how your insurance company can't force you to use someone. The reason that they prefer their contractors is that they have price deals with them. And I think some of you have experienced that already. Oh, Ron asked a good question. He says, if there's no accepted threshold standard for smoke and soot, can't the insurance company then simply claim that the reported levels are acceptable as per their own criteria? They can, but if there's any testing, then they're going to have a basis for that. And I think in most cases, your hygienist, if you have testing and have a hygienist, your hygienist is going to call out that acceptable level. So, if you have a certified industrial hygienist, like this report I showed you here, which says 5%. Okay, this is their, and I think you're going to see. I've seen 3%, 5%. Your adjuster's not going to be able to just come and say, oh, well, there's no acceptable level, so we're going to not have until 10% a threshold. I think that the hygienist is going to set that for you, even though there's nothing.
Sandy, if I could jump in for 1 second. I was actually just typing that back. I thought that was a good question as well. I do just want to remind, there is a general overarching theme here that the insurer has signed a contract with you to restore your home to at least its pre-loss condition. And remember that theme, running through here. I mean, getting guarantees of the work as well could also be a useful tool. And I don't know if you wanted to touch on that anymore, Sandy, but I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, no, I think that's a good point, pre-loss condition. And another question that came in here that's kind of along the same way, that they've talking about cleaning products used to clean the house caused a chemical smell in the home that was more troublesome than the smoke damage. Can you address this concern, please? And I think that's a really good question because, and that gets to vetting, vetting the experts, okay, and talking to them about what products they're going to use, what types of things. I hear that complaint about the chemical smell far more in water and mold cases, because in smoke, so the protocol in smoke, if you've got smoke in there, the protocol is dry removal first, starting at the ceiling and working down. Smoke rises, and when you clean smoke, even if you're HEPA vacuuming or sponging it off, some of the particles are going to become aerosolized in the air and they're going to float down. That's why the air scrubbers are used. Some of your carriers are saying, we don't scrub the air. Well, you're not. You're taking it. It's part of the actual cleaning of the structure. So when they're HEPA vacuuming the ceiling, working their way down, those little particles are coming down. They're getting sucked in through the big HEPA filter, and then they do a wipe down. Now, most of the wipe down on smoke is a very neutral detergent. So I would be really surprised if it had much of a smell. But if smell is an issue, some people are really, really sensitive to artificial fragrances. So if smell is an issue with you, then you need to talk to them beforehand and see what they're going to use. The other thing that they might do at the end is do some, there's some vapor thermal fogging that sometimes they add a fragrance to get rid of the smoke. So I would have them talk about that before they do it. And if it was my house and there was a chemical smell, I would call the restoration company back and have them, come and get rid of it. Okay. Who warrants the work? Most, hold on. So that's that. Hold on. Dan's asking, if I'm going to be picky and choosy about the professional I use, I will never get the work done. I'll be lucky if anybody responds, so I'm likely to accept the first legitimate person and company available. Certainly I'll try to get multiple bids, but I really don't know how to follow directives. Any ideas? Yeah, that's a problem. That's a big problem, finding enough, competent professionals to help you. And you just are going to, have to try to do your best and due diligence. This is one of the reasons why I'm so opposed to them rushing you with your additional living expense claims. You need the chance to find somebody who knows how to do it right. So I don't have a good answer for your question on that, Dan. I'm sorry to say. Whoopsie, sorry. Hold on. Who warrants the work? Most insurers don't guarantee the work because there's no relationship. So make sure that if they have some warranties, your contractor, gives you that. Also make sure they have workers' comp and licenses. Do your diligence. Restoration contractors do not have to have contractor's license unless they're doing rebuilding, but they should be certified. They should have workers' comp. They should, bonded, so forth. Okay. Assume nothing, get everything in writing. I think one of the things that you guys have all seen is that normal standards seem to disappear during catastrophes. Handling claims in writing with written communications between the adjuster and the insured is the way it's usually handled. So some of you have been told, the best one I've heard is it's a breach of privacy to write anything to you in a claim. That's ridiculous. So you want to keep people accountable, and accountability is key. And that's going to be getting things in writing, even if they tell you things on the phone. Go back and send them an email saying, this is what you told me today. Okay. Stay in charge of your claim. Okay. One of the things that I did want to, and I talked on this a little bit a minute ago. Oh, that's a good question. Here we got a good question. What's the best order for the process? Take out soft goods, HVAC. Yeah. So on that, I talked a little bit about the protocol. But yes, taking out the soft goods is the best first step. One of the things you'll notice is that smoke is held in the soft goods very easily. Things like curtains, if you have, little soft curtains and things like that, pillows, all that, get them out because they do hold the smoke. And you want to get as much out as you can. So then when the cleaning company comes in, do the outside first and talk to your remediation companies about the best way to do it. But you definitely don't want to, recontaminate everything. So you want to make sure that you take everything out. You don't only bring clean things in. And when you bring your clean things in, you want your house to be cleaned. HVAC is usually at the end. You want to make sure that you don't clean the house and then turn on an HVAC that hasn't been cleaned and inspected and serviced if necessary. And yeah, do the outside before the interior so that things don't get tracked in. It's just, and they should be very anxious, open to giving you the steps. Okay. Jeff says, fire retardant was dropped all over my property, roof, driveway, and grounds. This is a concern. I think it is. I think you are owed to power wash that. I personally don't like that kind of stuff. People have different, different tolerances on that. I don't like fire retardant. I don't think it's a good thing. So I would, yes, pay to have that pressure washed out. So this is one thing that sometimes people, and I talked about this before, so I'm not going to go into it, but wildfire heat is erratic. Unless your house was surrounded, you might know from which direction the most heat and smoke came from. Always look at those sides first. Like I said, windows, roofs, and all of that. How do I prove my home was impacted by heat from the wildfire? A lot of times you're going to need somebody, like I said before, like a roofer or a window, because the roofs and windows are the two big things. Also know that sometimes when you power wash your house, sometimes the paint comes off, and if that happens, then they would owe you to repaint. Okay. Just a few things. Who's qualified to inspect? Those are the same things. All cleaning methods are not the same. I talked a little bit about the protocol for smoke. I already talked about, you start at the top, you do the dry removal first, then you do a wet wipe, then you do deodorization. And if your family has a respiratory or other illness, let the remediation contractor know. Okay, let them know first so they don't use fragranced items. Depending on what your problem is with the illness, let them know. If they can't have certain chemicals, if they can't have certain scents, then let them know. Somebody said, shouldn't the HVAC be checked first before anything? I mean, it's a good idea. I don't know before anything, but it needs to happen at some point. And then Laurel says, should insurance pay for inspections from roofers, etc.? Hopefully most of the roofers should come out and give you an estimate for free, but talk to your adjuster if you can't find somebody to do it for free, see if they'll pay. I think they should. Okay, let's talk about resolving disputes. My insurance company won't accept my independent report. What do? You hold their feet to the fire. Okay, you write to them and you say, why not? Line it out to me. And don't just say, because we don't accept other people's reports. That's not a standard answer. The restoration company, the insurer brought in, did shoddy work, but still wants to be paid. I hear that kind of a lot. I think it is, they're not supposed to bring in restoration companies. They're not even supposed to suggest to you who to use. And I've heard situations where, and in this fire too, where a company's bringing in a restoration company and saying, well, you don't have to use them, but they can get the work done in 2 days. And so we're not going to pay beyond 2 days. We're not going to pay for you to get somebody else to come in. And so it kind of forces you to have them do the work. And then they come in with just a bucket and clean 5 feet up the walls, and then charges your insurance company for things that they didn't do. Put it in writing, and I have heard from you, people who have seen bills that the restoration company didn't do the work. Put it in writing and tell them that you don't want them to pay. When should I get the Department of Insurance involved? I think when, I think you'll know whenever you're at an impasse and you're not getting what you need and you feel like you should, and then bring them in. Okay. This is I did this for my Q&A last week. If the adjuster says no damage, these are just some things I wanted to do. Did your adjuster actually inspect inside? Okay, because I've heard from people one woman whose adjuster drove by the house several times and it looked fine on the outside. So she couldn't imagine that there would be any problem with the inside. Not a reasonable investigation. Is there visible smoke, ash, or char? Where? Take photos, document it. Is there smoke odor? Smoke odors are caused by particles. I talked about this. The first step is to remove the source. The source is smoke. What are your adjuster's credentials to make the decision? Are they an industrial hygienist? Are they certified fire? Or so forth. Can they provide something that states that they guarantee that the home is safe to reoccupy? One of my favorite things is when the adjuster says, your house is perfectly habitable, then I'm like, fantastic, that is great. Provide me something in writing that says that my house has no health concerns and I will happily reoccupy it, because they won't do that for you. Let's see, I've got a couple questions here. So Dan's talking about who to start with. He's got like refrigerator cleaning, general cleaning, landscape, wall repair. I would start with the interior, to take the steps to get your house habitable. So deal with things like the landscaping and the siding and all of that after you get the interior cleaned. I'll talk about fridges in a minute. Somebody also says if power or pressure washing takes off paint, yeah, they would owe you for the painting if that happens. It's not faulty work. It's when the cleaning company pressure washes it, it's not really faulty work. It's just paint that only takes so much. And you can probably, and I can tell pretty much in advance if the paint's going to come off, just because I'm used to seeing it. And I think that you should put that on your, and insurance companies are kind of used to dealing with that. Brian says, my farmer's adjuster will only pay for HEPA vacuuming clothes and hand dry cleaning the couch. How do I move the claim forward? I would get a professional textile people in there. HEPA vacuuming clothing. Okay, imagine dusty clothes. So say your clothes were dusty. Are you going to vacuum them to clean them? The HEPA vacuuming of clothing is something that's just amazing to me. It is not a standard protocol. That's something that ServiceMaster and farmers have cooked up on their little price per square foot thing that I think is pretty unethical. So I would have somebody like, there's a company called First Team. There's a company called CRDN. There's one called Bright Leaf. There's some other local ones. So find a textile restoration company that specializes in smoke and odor removal. Okay. Dry cleaning the couch. I could go either way with that. Depends on the cushions. I would also ask a professional restoration company whether they feel like it could be done. A lot of times you have to go through it, like cleaning the couches and things like that. And if it still smells, then you say, look, I tried to do what you asked me to do and it didn't work. And then you go from there. Okay. A lot of people are asking, do I have to wait for my adjuster to approve smoke remediation work before starting? You don't. This is your home. Most policies contain language that say, you know, if you had reasonably and necessarily spent money to repair or replace. Most policies include that. I can't guarantee, I'm not going to guarantee that your insurance company is going to reimburse you. They might deny it, but if you have the resources to do the work, I'd say be reasonable, do it as if you were paying for it yourself. And in most cases, people do get reimbursed in the end. Okay. How do I get them to pay for the testing? If there's visible smoke residue, but they're refusing to pay for remediation, what I would do is get the report. It's going to show the damage, send it in and say, look, you didn't conduct a reasonable investigation. Here's proof showing that. Okay. So then ask them for the, you know, the reimbursement. Eva says, if a contractor's estimate has been approved by the insurance company, can we, yes, you should always be paid directly. And it's up to you to choose who you want to do the work. So if you want to do it yourself, like if they're paying you to clean the fridge, you can do that yourself. That's fine. But you are entitled to what it would cost to pay. Brian says, my dirty dry cleaning was in a bag that smells of smoke. Does it matter that it was already dirty before sent to the textiles to clean? No, it's still smoky. So no big deal on that. If somebody's going to quip about that, it's ridiculous. Okay, payment questions. I get these. Should I accept the money that my insurance company is trying to pay me? Say your adjuster went out and said you need $5,000 worth of restoration work. You don't know. Maybe you haven't had a chance to get an estimate yet, or you don't agree with the amount. It's okay to accept the money. Write them an email saying I have it. I don't know if this is right or wrong. I'm going to go forward. I'll send you my estimate. See, Lorna said, regarding repair versus replace, if it's determined the repair did not restore the item and it needs to be replaced, are both of these processes coming out of my claim? Yes, they will. And some of them, you know, if you have a good restoration company, like your textile companies, if you have like a specialty item, a lot of times the company will say, hey, look, these are tough to clean, or this has, you know, this kind of soot on it. We can't guarantee we can get this clean. Most companies should pull those out and say, look, we'll try to clean them. And if they don't clean them, we'll have to replace them. But yes, then both of those costs would come out of your claim. Hopefully you guys don't. What if a company like ServPro will not provide an estimate? I would move on to a company that did. Know that most of these ServPro, Service Masters, they're franchises. So they're independently owned and operated. So when you say ServPro or Service Master, and I did it myself earlier, go to a different franchise. They're run by different people. You know, in a lot of cases, they'll do the work. You know, it's very common in water restoration for the restoration company because it's impossible to estimate water. It goes everywhere and so forth. So it's common for them not to do estimates on those. I think it's reasonable for them to do estimates on fire. So personally, I would go to another franchise or another company. Okay. I'm sorry this is going so long, but let's talk about refrigerator claims. I'm seeing some denial letters come across. I am going to be very bold and say that they are doing them incorrectly. That is my opinion. I get paid for my opinions when I'm not working for, well, even when I am working for UP. So, and the one I saw today, it says, you know, personal property is insured on a named peril basis, which means it's only covered for specific causes of loss. They're saying power interruption isn't one of them. They add a little limited coverage back in. But that is a way that is done in some states, but not in California. California has a predominant cause law. It means the most important cause of the loss determines coverage. Okay, so your adjuster, if they're from a different state, they might not know this. Okay, in this case, the most important cause of the refrigerator loss is fire. It's what set it in motion. We are pounding on them. We keep pounding on them with the predominant cause. I've heard a couple people now have had their refrigerators paid for. It's simply, in my opinion, it is simply incorrect coverage evaluation. The other thing is ask your adjuster what investigation they did to determine the cause of your refrigerator loss. One of the people that I've been communicating with sent me a picture of the burned power pole and the burned, where the power was clearly caused by fire. Most important cause of the loss, fire. Fire caused the infrastructure to go down. Fire caused your refrigerator to fester because it had no power. So keep on them. It will eventually work out. Okay. I've just put this in here. This is the jury instruction. I'm not going to go through it. No, it exists. If you want to come back and read it when we post this on here, it talks about if a loss is caused by a combination of covered, fire, and excluded, festering power outage. The loss is covered only if the most important or predominant cause is a covered risk. I think we're all can agree that the fire was the most important thing that happened here. Okay, I'm just keep at them, and eventually, it's ridiculous it's gone this long. Okay, this is the end of this part. Best practices, get it in writing. If they won't write you write them, write back to them, confirm it. Send it to that generic mailbox so it gets into your claim file. Be professional, be concise. Remember, this is a business. I know it's very, very stressful and very personal because it's your home, it's your life. You guys are displaced. But the more concise and to the point you can be, and the less, venting your frustrations, the better it'll turn out. Okay. Keep going to our website, uphelp.org. We do have the 2020 wildfire page. Here's the Department of Insurance information. You can call them. They've got friendly, helpful people on the end if you just have a question. You can go online and do a complaint. They'll take it over the phone, however you want to do it. I want to say thank you to our funders and partners, Napa Community Foundation and the Community Foundation of Santa Cruz County, who have given us grants to bring us to you tonight. So thank you. Thank them when you see them, or shout out to them. Sign up for our mailing list to be added to future events. Tomorrow night, Amy Bach will be doing the total loss dwelling portion of your claim. If you have anything that actually burned, go and talk about, listen to that tomorrow. Okay, and thank you guys. We do have a Q&A. So I don't know if any of you were able to join us last week, but next Wednesday, we will be answering your wildfire questions. Send them to us in advance. And we'll try to get it. If you send it to me in advance, not like 10 minutes before, then I try to incorporate it into my PowerPoint, and that kind of informs me on what are the issues that everybody, and I'm trying to stay on top of them, but if you send them to me, then I can incorporate them into my PowerPoint and really expand on it and not do it as an afterthought. But we will have people able to ask your questions live. There is an event on the 15th for renters. There's a few little differences there. And so hopefully you can join us. Eva says, will hiring an experienced insurance attorney early in the process wake up the insurance company or cause them to freeze up? It just depends. The things that happen, whoops, are, hold on, I just lost my, whoops. I just closed my thing. So I've seen a lot of things happening. I got called on a claim that outside of UP that I'm working on today. And they just said, well, I'd like to have this reviewed by my attorney. I'll get back to you. And they denied the claim right there. So I can hardly predict anymore what will happen. But I think if you feel you need it, we're trying to help people get through without, attorneys definitely, and public adjusters and all that have a great role to play when impasses are reached. I think that personally, I recommend saving them a little bit more for the end if you reach an impasse. And you're welcome. Yeah, and I know, I understand between the get into how hard it is to get contractors. California is in such a state. We already had a shortage of housing. We already had a shortage of contractors. We had a shortage of materials, and it's just hard. And I think that you need to, guys, one of the things that I notice is that when the adjusters are unhelpful, it tends to shut down communication. And I'd really like to encourage you guys to really push them. And when you get them on the phone, talk to them about these things and talk to them about how hard it is to find contractors and building materials and experts and all of this stuff. And say, look, what am I supposed to do? I mean, theoretically, all these people are humans and are supposed to be, reasonable. So I think it's important. And I think it's important that you're not pushed. I think reasonably diligent in getting your claim moving along is to be expected. You can't, just sit there. But I do think that having the time to find the proper professionals is part of the process. So really push for it. Jeff asked, is it naive of me to think that my local insurance company who sold the policy would be our best initial advocate? I think that's a great idea, Jeff. I really think they should be. I think that if they're selling the policies, they should stand behind them, service them. I think that for those of you, this is an excellent time. And I know this is hard for me to suggest this, but as soon as this is over, you guys should go talk to your agent, talk to your broker, think about, unfortunately, it's going to be hard to buy different insurance, but you really should have a conversation about, if my house had burned down all the way, I'm going to assume you guys are all partials, would you have had enough money to rebuild? Okay, because we find the most common problem with the total losses is that they don't have enough money to rebuild. So I would really urge you, once this is over, to really take a good look at that. Okay, so it's 7 o'clock. We've been here for an hour and a half. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. Hang in there. It's super bummer that you guys are going through such a hard time. And I hang in there. We're really working hard. Thank you guys for your nice words. We're really working hard. The NBC work on State Farm will be coming out pretty soon. So hopefully that'll help a little bit. And, go to the Department of Insurance, keep asking for supervisors. If you're on your third adjuster, make them give you that single point of contact. Once you've got that, you've got a line right into a supervisor. I know somebody asked that earlier. The other thing you can do if you want to talk to a supervisor is call the generic State Farm number. And I think it's like 1-800-SF claims or something like that. Call the generic number, give the person who answers the phone your claim number and say, I would like to know who the supervisor is on my claim. And I think if you're having issues with your adjuster not giving you their supervisor's name, I've found that's very helpful. Most of the time, the person on the end of the line is like, hey, a question I can answer. They'll look it up for you. It's right there on the claim file, and they can give that to you. So if you're having trouble, or go to your agent and see if your agent can get you a supervisor. So with that, I'm going to leave you. Thanks again for joining us. I know it's not what you wanted to do in your evening, and I know there was debates and everything going on tonight. So thanks for joining us, and hang in there, and we'll see you soon. Good night.